Welcome back to Fox Recaps. Today, I'm going to explain the movie Demolition Man, released in the year 1993. The movie begins with a criminal gang in Los Angeles hijacking a bus carrying 30 passengers. Soon, the police arrive at the crime scene to rescue the passengers. A police officer named John Spartan, the best criminal destroyer, is in the helicopter and on his way to the criminal's location. John informs the other officer that the criminal gang leader is a maniac named Simon Phoenix. Following this, John jumps onto the building's roof and enters, shooting several gang members. As he walks inside, Simon notices John through the CCTV camera, so he punctures several gallons of gasoline. A few moments later, John enters Simon's room and inquires about the hostages, but Simon doesn't reveal anything. John threatens him with a gun, but Simon informs him that he's standing on gasoline. Simon then lights a cigarette and throws it on the floor, starting a fire. Because of this, John backs up, but soon jumps on Simon and begins beating him up. Shortly after, the fire spreads throughout the building and John carries Simon out. Fortunately, the duo is able to escape before the building collapses. Outside, the captain chastises John for entering without permission. The captain then inquires about the hostages, to which John responds that he performed a thermal check and found no hostages. Simon overhears their conversation and informs John that he's incorrect. Soon after, a firefighter informs the captain that many dead bodies have been discovered inside the building. Following that, John is imprisoned for the involuntary murder of 30 civilians. He is then sentenced to 70 years in cryostasis, in which his behavior will be altered through synaptic suggestion. After the warden, William Smithers, has finished reading the sentence, John is placed in a chamber and a liquid is filled in it. The warden then places a canister in the chamber and releases the chemical, freezing John instantly. After 36 years, Los Angeles has merged with San Diego and Santa Barbara to form the city of San Angeles. The city has drastically changed and people are no longer violent. Crimes have become non-existent and even cursing at someone is an offense. Meanwhile, a new lieutenant named Lenina Huxley has just arrived in San Angeles. She calls William as it's her duty to observe the city's situation. William responds that the prisoners are frozen, so there's no need to be concerned. On the other hand, a man named Edgar Friendly observes a food delivering van through his periscope and informs his friends the next van will arrive in 12 hours. In the police station, the captain named George warns Lenina because she appears to be waiting for a crime to happen. She then enters her cabin and whispers some curse words, prompting the automated machine to issue her a fine. After this, Lenina approaches an officer named Alfredo and inquires if he doesn't get bored because there's no action going on. Lenina appears to be bored with the lack of challenges. In the next scene, the warden takes Simon out of the cryo prison, and while briefing the proceedings, Simon speaks up the password, Teddy Bear, freeing himself. He then kills the guards and takes the warden's eye to unlock the doors via his retina. As soon as he exits the building, the police receive the alert signal. A short time later, they discover it is the murder, death, kill alert, which they haven't received in the previous 16 years. Soon, they're also terrified to see the brutal video footage of the crime scene. Lenina examines the prisoner list and notices that Simon is missing. She tries to learn more about Simon by entering his code, but she discovers that he isn't assigned with any codes. Meanwhile, Simon visits the information booth and discovers that he's gained some new abilities. He hears a voice in his head telling him to kill Edgar, but he appears perplexed. He then looks for a location where he can find some guns. A few moments later, the police arrive at the information booth and order him to surrender. Simon easily beats up the officers because they have no experience dealing with physical violence. In the following scene, we see Dr. Raymond, the city's governor, receiving information about Simon's prison escape. Following that, he calls George and instructs him to do everything in his power to apprehend the prisoner. However, just like the other officers, even George is of no match to the violent Simon. After a bit of discussion, Lenina asserts that John is the only one who can apprehend Simon, so she suggests that he be released. George initially refuses, but she eventually persuades him by stating that an old-fashioned criminal requires an old-fashioned cop. They then unfreeze John, and when he regains his consciousness, Lenina informs him that he has been inside for 36 years. John immediately inquires about his wife and child. Sadly, he learns that his wife died as a result of an earthquake, and the location of his daughter is unknown. Lenina also informs him that Simon has escaped from the prison and has killed 11 people. Following this, John requests a cigarette, but Lenina informs him that harmful and unhealthy products are prohibited. Confused and angry, John uses foul language, which results in him being fined several times. Later, George tells John to prepare to catch Simon, but he refuses because he was punished even though he caught Simon 36 years ago. However, George blackmails him to put him back to cryostasis, and John is forced to accept the mission. Later, Lenina says that Simon is difficult to apprehend because he doesn't have the microchip implanted in his body. Just then, John asks for some guns, but Lenina informs him that they don't have any, as all the guns are locked up inside the museum. Hearing this, John concludes that Simon will soon visit the museum, and along with Lenina and Alfredo, he rushes there. As predicted by John, Simon is seen in the museum, heading towards the armor section. When he gets there, he tries to break the glass with his fist, but fails. So he throws one of the staff through it, causing the glass to shatter. Following that, he grabs a shotgun and breaks more glass in order to obtain more weapons. After some time, John, Lenina, and Alfredo arrive at the museum with an electric rod that can only stun people. John asks the two officers to wait outside for 10 minutes while he enters the museum to apprehend Simon. Inside, Simon starts shooting at John as soon as he sees him. John immediately takes cover and locates a shotgun, which he uses to fire back. Simon dashes into the next room and John follows him. In the room, John notices a lamp above Simon and shoots it, causing it to fall on him. Simon manages to avoid it, but the glass floor shatters, causing him to fall. However, he quickly gets up and shoots the rest of the glass floor, causing John to fall as well. Simon keeps firing at John, but he manages to dodge his attacks. Soon, both of them engage in a hand-to-hand fight, and John eventually knocks him down. He then electrocutes Simon with his electric rod, temporarily blinding him. Just when John thinks that he's won, Simon grabs his gun, fires at him, and flees the museum. Outside, Simon runs into Raymond and his assistant, Bob. Simon tries to shoot Raymond, but surprisingly, he fails. Here we get to know that it was Raymond who assisted Simon in escaping captivity. Raymond then reminds him of Edgar and orders him to murder him. While conversing, Simon notices John approaching him, so he flees. Following that, John approaches Raymond, who thanks him for saving his life and invites both John and Lenina to dinner. Later that night, the duo meets Raymond, where the latter tells them about how he transformed the chaotic city into a peaceful one. However, John expresses dissatisfaction with the current rules and functioning. While they're eating, John notices a suspicious man outside the restaurant and goes out to investigate. Just then, Edgar and his men emerge from the sewers to steal the restaurant's food. When Edgar sends men to fight John, he cuts the rope, causing the canvas to fall on the robbers. When the spectators see this, they applaud John's bravery, and Edgar and some of his men flee. John is about to beat one of the members, but he stops when he realizes they're there to steal food. Following this, Bob informs him that the gangs are known as Scraps, and they are the city's last remaining criminal element. Later, Raymond and Bob return to their office and discover that Simon has already arrived. Simon is overjoyed with his new skills and abilities, but Raymond reminds him that they're given to him in order to kill Edgar. Simon then states that he requires more men for the mission and provides a list of prisoners he wishes to release. Meanwhile, Lenina takes John to her home, which is equipped with cutting-edge technology. She then expresses her delight at seeing him fight and invites him to make love with her. Initially, John is surprised to hear this, but later he agrees. After that, Lenina brings two virtual helmets, places one on his head, and says that they can start making love. John appears perplexed, but he too closes his eyes. As soon as he does so, he sees himself having an intimate relationship with Lenina, but becomes frustrated due to the lack of physical contact and removes the helmet. He then says that he wants to do it the old-fashioned way. Hearing this, Lenina becomes enraged because physical contact can cause a variety of diseases and is illegal. Regardless, he attempts to kiss her, but she orders him to leave. John then goes to his room and watches the CCTV footage he obtained from Lenina. In the footage, he sees Simon approached by Raymond during the escape from the museum. With this, he learns that the duo is working together. The following day, John apologizes to Lenina for the previous night and presents her with a sweater he knitted himself. John wonders as to how he's able to knit clothes, and Lenina informs him that various skills were implanted in him as part of his rehabilitation, and his most prominent skill is knitting. However, when they check Simon's skill set, they're shocked to find that he's an expert in computers, martial arts, and is a genius. As John is puzzled by the revelation, Lenina informs him that Raymond Industries is responsible for such developments. Hence, they go to the place to confront Raymond. They enter the video conference room where Raymond apologizes for being unable to attend in person. John doubts Raymond about Simon's ability, but the latter denies it. Enraged, he walks into Raymond's office and points a gun at him. Raymond instructs Lenina to return John to cryostasis, but instead, she assists John in locating Simon. Following that, John, Lenina, and Alfredo enter the sewer in search of Simon. Inside, they discover a vintage vehicle, but soon Edgar confronts them. However, John clarifies that they're not behind him, but Raymond wishes to murder him. Meanwhile, Simon encourages his newly released gang to murder Raymond and John in order to rule the city. Soon after, Simon and his gang find John and other officers in the sewer and begin firing at them. Tired of the constant humiliations, Edgar mans up and aids John in his fight against Simon's gang. With the tides turned against him, Simon begins to lose the battle, so he escapes in Lenina's car. Seeing this, John and Lenina enter the vintage vehicle and start pursuing him. After a while, John hands the steering wheel to Lenina and jumps into Simon's car. Simon punches him several times, but he manages to hang on and soon throws Simon out of the running car. Following this, John tries to stop the car but is unable to do so, and the car crashes outside the police station. Fortunately, the technologically advanced car is protected by thick foam, and this saves John's life. On the other hand, Simon pays a visit to Raymond, who's eager to use Simon's power to rule the city. However, Simon doesn't like his idea and tries to shoot him. When he fails again, he hands the gun to a gang member and orders him to shoot. After killing Raymond, they set his body on fire. Meanwhile, Simon notices the arrival of John and Lenina via CCTV footage and dispatches two of his men to stop them. Overpowering those men, John and Lenina proceed to Raymond's room, only to discover that he has died. They also learn that Simon is planning to unfreeze additional prisoners, so they rush to the prison. Before leaving, John stuns Lenina, assuring her safety, and walks alone towards Simon. In the prison, Simon is unfreezing the criminals, and when he is finished, he kills the rest of the staff. A few moments later, John arrives and begins the shooting battle. After using an array of advanced weapons, the two again revert to a hand-to-hand fight. This time, Simon subdues John because of his advanced skills. But as he's about to finish his opponent, John grabs a chemical vial and breaks it, releasing the chemical and causing Simon to freeze. John then grabs a moving claw machine and kicks Simon's head off. As the explosion occurs, John manages to flee the building. Outside, John informs the chief that Simon has died and that the prison is no longer functional. The chief is concerned about the prison, but John assures him that a way out will be found. Following that, he approaches Lenina, who claims that they work well together. John agrees and kisses her, which makes her feel better, so she kisses him once more. That was all from the video. I hope you liked it. Subscribe for more content like this and hit the like button to help us out. Also, leave a comment if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Until next time, take care.